Today's digital consumer looks different. Their behaviors have changed, and with the pandemic, one could argue transformed. The way that we shop, the way that we search for content to watch, even the way we purchase our groceries have changed the very idea of a linear customer journey. No transaction is ever done the same, and to understand our consumers requires a look into techniques that focus on behavioral data, no matter where the consumer's journey starts or where it ends. Finding this data may require a more passive approach to picture our target audiences accurately. Ask yourself, is it time to remove the participants' burden in reporting and allow them to actually say, participate? Hello, my name is Sharday Torgerson, the creative and digital strategist at Incitrix Research in Saskatoon, Canada, and your guest host for today's podcast episode. You may recognize me from co-hosting past episodes such as market research in the world of marketing, digital marketing and small business, data visualization, and market research and the world of marketing. In this episode of Stories of Market Research, we're talking about passive data collection, what it is, how it is used, what types of insights it produces, concerns around privacy and ethics, and how to recruit for projects using this technique. I am excited to introduce an interview we did shortly before the new year with Billy Grant, Head of Product at RealityMine. Billy gives us a look into the world of passive metering through the lens of RealityMine, a state-of-the-art software buzzing in the market research industry. Billy gives us an in-depth look into how passive metering works, what types of businesses have successfully employed passive metering. He also touches on the security of the software while sharing what exciting new initiatives they have into 2021. Later in the episode, we are joined by our data scientist, Ifeoma Adaji, and research executive, Julie Ellis, to understand how Incitrix uses passive metering. They discuss some recent Incitrix projects using this method and how we manage both client and participation expectations while using passive metering. Let's dive in.
All right, I'm here with Billy Grant from RealityMine. Hi, Billy. Thanks for coming on our podcast. How's it going today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on. Really glad that to have you on, and actually, I'm pretty excited to talk about passive data collection with you. I'm wondering, though, for our listeners, could you tell about your role at RealityMine and the company itself?
Yeah, absolutely. RealityMine have been I think they were founded in 2012. So not an old business, but not a young business either. We essentially support our clients in the capture of digital behavioural data from smartphones, tablets, desktop devices as well. Headquartered in Manchester in the UK, about 60 employees. We've also got sales representation, or sales is basically out of London, got someone in Stockholm, and then Sydney in Australia as well. So nice broad spread geographically. Sort of market leader in terms of what we're doing as well. Really strong growth this year despite COVID, which I know the market research sector's been hit pretty hard this year. I think we're lucky in the fact that we've been resilient to that. Mm-hmm. And really, we're focused on delivering a high quality data set across the websites people visit, the apps they use, the media they're consuming across the likes of Netflix, etc. Shopping behaviours as well. So collecting all of that rich data, providing that back to our clients for research purposes, and really having compliance and privacy at the heart of everything that we do as well. So making sure that we're operating well within the scope of international, local sort of privacy legislations. Transparent in terms of the nature of the capture that we're performing as well, and making sure that data is well protected. And in terms of my role, So I'm head of product at RealityMine. And really what that means, so if we imagine a Venn diagram, everyone loves a Venn diagram. So we've got clients in one pot and their needs. We've got our the needs of the business, the needs of RealityMine itself, and then the needs of our development teams who are actually building those products. So I try to sit in the middle of that Venn diagram and really try and balance all the needs of those various stakeholders. So
sounds fascinating. And you talked about data collection and data capture. Let's just say that's pretty much passive data collection, correct? I wonder if you could break that down a little bit for our listeners who may not know about it a little bit, just sort of what passive data collection really is and how it works.
I think put in the simplest terms, passive metering is the collection of data without explicit input being required from the user themselves. So, we'll experience this in our, as we go about our day-to-day. So it could be counters as you go in and out of a shop. There's going to be tracking within the websites and applications that you visit. So, are you clicking on particular products? Have you seen a particular ad? Or when you open an app like a weather application that uses location data to provide you with the weather where you are. So all of those types of data streams, if you like, are passively collected. In terms of what we do, we're really there to provide organisations with an understanding of what people actually do without having to ask them. So we know if you ask users, what they're doing day to day to express their behaviours themselves is going to be unreliable. So we use our software to take that out of the equation and really make it easier for both researchers but also respondents to provide a clear view of what they're doing day to day. Our focus specifically is really around data collection from smartphones. So think about your iPhone or any Android device as well. That's really our specialism. We also serve tablets and desktop devices or laptop devices, and really it's about the collection of the websites people are browsing to, the referenced, what apps people are using, and the behaviours within them.
That's really cool. I'm wondering if you could let me know what kind of organizations employ this kind of data collection.
RealityMine, we're working almost exclusively with market research organisations. In terms of the end clients that we're serving, with that data, it's a very, very broad spectrum. I think where we typically see the strongest demand is going to be amongst big technology organisations, the FANGs that are out there, broadcasters, publishers, media organisations as well. Then on the other side, we'll be thinking of big CPG brands, electronics manufacturers. You could go on and on. Most verticals are going to use or be able to utilise sort of digital behavioural data in some way. But I think where we typically see ourselves falling, it's either going to be very large media owners, so people selling advertising fundamentally, or selling eyes, or big advertising spenders who have limited first-party data and really need themselves to make sure that they're appropriately informing their audience and reaching the right audiences without that first-party data to hand.
And it sounds like there's a whole lot of difference in depth of what you could actually refer to as passive data. Like you were saying, you could be just talking about people walking into stores and getting number clicks of those folks. Or like you're saying, you can get even deeper in that and monitor their, say, web browsing activity.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, some clients, I think we need to look at this at the various levels at which people need insight. So, in the simplest terms, we could think about specific domains. So, Amazon.com, huge website. People will know, just anecdotally, gets lots of traffic because they will say, I use this a lot. Firstly, it's important to know the type, the level of reach that websites at a high level are achieving, so that brands can understand, okay, who do I need to work with? where should I be advertising, to make those sort of broad brush strategic decisions. What we're also able to do is go down to that next level and say, okay, within those websites, what are the specific pages that users are actually looking at within them? So, within a retail context, it could be product pages within Amazon, the searches they make within those websites, and really get down into some of the more granular detail that will then inform, potentially the sort of tactical elements that businesses need to employ, to best reach users, best engage with them. And you could apply that logic across pretty much any vertical. If we think about publishing, for instance, okay, people are reading this publisher's content, we know that, but what are the specific articles, the specific stories that they're engaging with as well. And what RealityMine are very good at is really applying that logic, but also taking it to the next level, where I think people might see this idea of walled gardens as well, and the ability to see within them. So we've had particular strengths in the measurement of SVOD services, so stream video on demand. I'll avoid using acronyms too much. So stream video players, so the likes of Netflix, YouTube, Amazon Prime as well, think of Hulu, etc., etc. And being able to actually understand what people are viewing within those services as well, and be able to, I suppose, unpick what is rapidly becoming a mad dash for visibility of what consumers are seeing, new frontiers in terms of where advertising spend is going as well. So I think we're well placed there in being able to service markets that don't really exist yet, and be able to provide insights to those end brands about how they should be approaching some markets that have been almost constant disruption.
Sounds like an amazing resource to actually have access to. I'm a marketer myself, so the idea of having a hands on all that data is kind of tantalizing. I can't lie. Earlier, you'd mentioned survey data. Threw a little bit of shade, honestly, about how when you ask people how they maybe behave or how they feel about a thing, they might be giving you some level of bias in that response. And something in market research, I guess, we're all accustomed to. Do you see passive data as a way to complement that survey data?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the real strength in what we're able to provide is it's being able to say with absolute clarity, this is what a user did. This is what a user did. I think for me, and where surveys are best employed, is allowing that understanding of why a user performed a certain action. I think if we can help to remove that reliance on recall, self-reported behaviours, the bias that's implicit in that as well, I think we can really see passive data as that means to make surveys more efficient, more valuable, and the time that we're asking users to spend, completing those questionnaires ultimately, making sure that the questions we're able to ask within them are as highly targeted, highly relevant, and really allow you to build that contextual understanding rather than focusing on the what. And I think the flip side of this as well is being able to use passive data as a profiling data point. Cool. So rather than sending out huge numbers of screener surveys saying, did you visit this specific website in the last 30 days, if we can start to remove the need for that and actually use passive as that profiling point, we can provide much richer data to layer into some of the a lot of the survey work that has been done, will be done for years ahead. I think that's one of the keys for us.
That does sound like a really great compliment, because it breaks down the difference between self-reported opinion, maybe thoughts on a certain subject, from actual behavioral stuff. It boils it down to brass tacks, if you want to say it, to say that this is actually what the person's doing and this is how they feel about a thing. That's, to me, really cool. So just looking forward, do you see any scenarios in which more researchers are going to start looking at relying more on that quant data collected through passive data monitoring than through survey data?
Yeah, so I think the key example here. So I would pose you a question, Don.
Okay.
How many times in the last 30 days have you picked up your phone?
Oh gosh, daily. So at least maybe 10 times a day times 30.
Okay. How many times have you visited Amazon?
Oh gosh, I actually don't use it very often, but it's still somebody who doesn't use it very often, probably a couple times a month.
Got it. So what you're going to get in there is some people will go through the process of trying to think fairly carefully around how many times they pick up their phone. 10, I would say, is a wild understatement of how many times people are going to be using their phones every day. So I think where it becomes key, and I think we've already spoken about some of this, is being able to secure high quality, reliable data on ultimately some of the key profiling points that people will sometimes report inaccurately, or they just don't remember. And that's fine. So asking people how many times they've used an app or they've visited their website is, in my view, in our view, never going to yield very good results. And there's also these inherent biases in how people want to present themselves, and also whether they want to qualify for additional surveys potentially as well, and earn those rewards. So a colleague I used to work with in a business called Hitwise actually used to start every presentation he delivered with the phrase "everybody lies, everybody lies," to really try and underline the value of the the data that we provide. And I'd say the same at RealityMine. So back when I was an analyst delivering PowerPoint presentations to roomfuls of various executives in different businesses, I'd often pose the question to them: how many of you read the Mail Online on a monthly basis? So for users that aren't aware, Mail Online is a slightly tabloidy website, lots of controversial news articles, gossip column type stuff, and celebrity news. So very few, but virtually no one would put their hand up. And then I would show them a stat that said, well, 95% of you, according to our data, do visit at least once on a monthly basis. Then you get this flood of people coming through saying, well, yeah, of course I do, but it's only for the celebrity gossip stuff occasionally. It's a guilty pleasure. That, for me, is what underlines the value of this data. So it can reveal things that people normally might be unwilling to share, and that's the key for me.
That's really cool. And then you can actually look at surveys to explore things like their values, their thoughts about the things that they're doing, as opposed to, frankly, getting that data from them that may be unreliable and it may be biased, right?
Yeah, precisely.
That's lovely.
Precisely that.
That's really cool. Just real quick, I know you mentioned earlier about how the process works through the installation of software. That's done on, like you said, tablets, smartphones, correct?
Yeah. So we support data collection consistently, by the way, across iOS. So iPhones, cool. Android devices, tablets, whether Apple built or running Android. And then also Macs and Windows devices as well.
So, and that's just usually just downloaded as an app that you just put on the smartphone kind of thing?
Yeah, correct. So, the user will be invited to participate in a study where we say, digital data collection will be a part of this. They're then invited to install our application. Have the nature of that study outlined to them. They can agree again or choose to opt out. So choice is always at the forefront, as is transparency, making sure people understand what they're engaged in. We're not just building software to sit silently running in the background. And yes, across all those devices, then we're able to capture web usage, application usage, and in certain instances, the behavior within those apps as well.
And that's important to actually stress, is that this is always with the full consent of any participant in the research. And of course, a lot of the times they're actually rewarded for their further participation, correct?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we're always at pains to stress that, because I'm acutely aware that the market for data and some of the players within this space, with various scandals over the course of years, and we know that if you're not whiter than white, ultimately you're gonna fail. You'll get caught out. People don't like being misled, and we're always at pains to make sure data security is top of mind, transparency, making sure that users ultimately know what they're signing up to. Making sure that we're a leader in that level of transparency that we're able to provide.
100%. And as a market research agency, yeah, that's the same thing with a lot of the stuff that we do. We have to be 100% transparent with our participants, right? We were talking about the device needing an app or the software actually installed on the device, be it iPhone, Android device, tablet, what have you. How's the device's security affected with the monitoring app installed? Is this affected in any way?
Simple answer is no.
Cool.
It's not. Which you would hope anyway.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, hopefully multiple times by now, security, privacy, absolutely top priority for us. So, in terms of how we're doing that, the data we actually collect on the device itself is encrypted when we capture it. It's encrypted when it's stored on device. It's encrypted when it's sent from the device into our servers. Within those servers, it's encrypted, and when we send it to clients, it's encrypted. So, we're really treating that as a precious commodity. The way that our technology is implemented means, what we're not doing is connecting devices to servers that people can tap into. The overwhelming majority of the processing in terms of data collection is taking place on the device itself. Do not compromise the security of the device. So if users are, installing our software, their device is no more vulnerable than it would have been before our software was there.
That's really cool, because sometimes folks do have concerns about the device operationality with this stuff running in the background. So it's really nice to know that with the app installed, it's pretty much seamless. You don't really even notice it in the background, and your security isn't affected.
No, but I think that's key for us, because I think making sure that we minimise the impact on a user's experience is fundamental, and we do that by the data collection we're performing is really configurable. So we can be highly targeted. We can disregard anything to do with banking apps, for instance, or financial transactions. We don't want to touch that, and neither does the user. So making sure we're highly targeted. We only collect the data we need to. Really make sure that the impact on the user's day-to-day is minimised as possible.
And when you're doing research with passive monitoring, how long should you usually be doing these projects with the participants? Maybe 1 month, 3 months, somewhere in there?
It completely depends on the nature of the study. We see huge scope in terms of the length of time that data collection will be running for. So if it's a multi-year audience measurement project, we're going to have thousands, tens of thousands of users, ideally running over very long periods of time. So that could be 5 years in most cases. Is how that data collection will run for. I think we've got a user on one of our clients' panels that's been running our software for, it won't be 10 years, but it'll be approaching 10 years by now. So you can get huge longevity out of that. On the flip side, we could have qual studies that run for a month for 20 users, and are highly targeted as well. And it could be less than a month. It could just be a period of 2 weeks, as an example. So really depends what users want to get out of it. From a qual perspective, we've run projects for agencies where they're trying to understand minute detail. The behaviour of 9 users who I believe it was running enthusiasts, and the process that they go through in terms of deciding what the next pair of shoes they buy should be. They're doing focus groups, they're doing passive metering, they're being interviewed almost on a daily basis. So it can be, I suppose what I'm saying, very wide spectrum, ultimately.
Since I've got you here, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, since we have so many market research agencies and marketers who listen to the podcast, they'd be pretty mad at me if I didn't ask. Because an app has to be installed onto the personal device of your participants, what are some best practices you can use or suggest to convince them to actually sign up for a study that involves passive metering?
So this is a question that we get on a fairly regular basis, as you can imagine.
I imagine.
We've spent a lot of time over the last 18 months sort of building out a war chest of best practice ideas, strategies, and tactics that can be employed by our clients as well. We have someone who's dedicated full time to panelist experience as a program within RealityMine. I think the key for me, transparency is the word I've used a lot on this call, and make sure users really understand what they're being asked to do and how that data is going to be used, what data will be collected, what data won't be collected, and what will be disregarded ultimately. I think making sure that users are put at ease about what they're entering into, because I think if we think about people's phones, ultimately their smartphones, that's their life. Private messages, you've got your photos, you've got all your most people are doing all their shopping through phones now. Your banking, financial management is all done on device. So making people feel comfortable with that is key. The second point, I think, is making sure that users are incentivized appropriately. If we're asking people to run the software on the device for a month, 2 months, 3 months, make sure that we're paying them properly for that. Because I think users are more conscious by the day of the value of this data, and drip feeding them a few points here and there isn't always going to cut it. So I think making sure that you budget appropriately to make sure that decent incentive levels are being delivered, and making sure users are made aware that they can pause metering at any time. So we've invested a lot in features within the app itself. If a user wants to, make certain browsing activity private, they can press a button, will pause metering for a time period of their choosing. So it could be 15 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour more. We can make that as configurable as we'd like. So I think making sure that the user knows that they're in control is key as well. And they can, if they want, they can uninstall the application at any point, which makes life easier, but not easier in terms of data collection.
I can see that actually be really important, is to actually let folks know that they are in control the whole time, and even though they're a participant in the research, that control isn't interrupted. I know the new year's coming up. What's RealityMind getting up to moving into the new year?
I think it'll be big, strategically for us coming into the new year. So, an expansion of the video on demand measurement that we're able to provide. Thinking the likes of Hulu, Peacock. We've seen huge investment in stream video on demand over the last 2 years. We don't expect that to slow down anytime soon. We're seeing, significant demand for measurement services there. We'll be focusing on that. And number two, it's probably something that was really, kicked up a gear by COVID-19 pandemic, is audio measurement. So thinking specifically of the music that people are listening to on their devices, podcasts that they're listening to. It's very contextual for this.
Yeah, it's real close to my heart.
I know, but also radio measurement. The smartphones becoming the device of choice for audio consumption. Traditional radio definitely isn't dead, but we've seen rapid fragmentation of how that content is consumed. I think if you speak to people, you'll know anecdotally that podcasts are huge. They can it's highly relevant because you can search for the content you want, and I think we definitely forecast demand for those services. Really beginning to spike. And the third piece, new product concept that we've initially brought to market with a panel organisation called M4 in the USA. So this is a concept for us where, rather than thinking about passive data collection as, something, to generate, measurement and lots of event level data, what we're actually trying to do is use passive data as the trigger to deliver surveys. So in as close to real time as we can get it across any website, across any application, send a survey based on a particular trigger. So if you're visiting, a particular retailer website, for instance, let's send a survey to understand that event. Less concern with, the precise behaviour behind it, but again, leveraging passive as that directional pointer in terms of how should we be more efficiently, collecting contextual data and understanding what users want and need.
Those real-time surveys are really pretty cool, actually. We're looking at similar things ourselves, and the value of getting a person's thoughts and opinions right there at that behavioral cue, it's so valuable, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because we've seen it. We've seen a lot of our clients doing this with location-triggered surveys. So if you go into a particular store or a particular restaurant, how did you find your experience? And then benchmark that against competitors. We want to take that same approach and really bring it into the digital environment.
That's really cool. You know what? I could talk to you for another hour about real-time surveys and the value of them. So I'm going to actually stop. I just looked at the time and I've noticed that we've taken quite a lot of your time. I want to thank you for that, Billy. It's been really informative. Thanks for that.
No problem. I've enjoyed it.
Well, we really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thanks, Duncan.
The Incitrix Communities platform is your market research online panel solution. This all-encompassing platform includes both qualitative and quantitative capabilities and updates in real time for quick results. Whether you're engaging with stakeholders on an ongoing basis, or if you have quick ad hoc projects to implement, the Insightrix Communities online market research platform includes options and features to meet your unique research needs. Insightrix Communities works continuously to develop and enhance robust features to meet market research demands. For more information about the Incitrix Communities online market research panel software, check out the website at www.incitrixcommunities.com.
We're here with Incitrix data scientist Ifeoma Adaji and Incitrix research associate Julie Ellis. Thanks to you both for coming onto the podcast to talk about passive data collection. Ifeoma, we talked earlier about passive data collection and how it works with Billy from RealityMine. But I wonder, could you maybe break that down? Like, what is passive data and how passive data collection works for our audience?
So passive data is data that is not, that is collected from a person without the direct involvement of that person. So traditional means of getting data from people are through questionnaires or asking them, the questions themselves. For example, what app did you use by 7 p.m. last night? But research has shown that over time, people don't typically remember the details of what they've done in the past. So there was a need to come up with a better way of getting this information from people without having to ask them or rely on their memory. And that's where passive data collection comes in. So it's a way of collecting data from people without involving them directly in the data collection process. Nowadays, especially with the mobile device, is through what they call passive data metering, which is installing an app, which is called a meter, on one's mobile device so that the app would be in the background of the device, collecting data from that device. So the data it could collect are things like the websites they visited, the apps they've used, the locations they are, where they've been to, how long they've been on those devices, what stores they shop from, the search terms they use, videos they watch, things like that, without having to ask them about it. I think it's one of the most effective ways of getting feedback from somebody without having to ask them, without having to make them try to remember. Mm-hmm. And as you say, it takes out the reporting bias from them.
That's awesome. Now, is that something you've been doing long yourself?
So for me, I have done some means of passive data collection before Incitrix. The earliest method that has to do with some form of digital technology is the use of cookies, where the cookies store, when you go to browse a site, software stores some of the information you do in your session on your computer so that when next you come back, It remembers where you were before. If you had stuff in a shopping cart, it kind of pulls that back for you. So I have done some work using cookies as a means of passive data collection. But in terms of using like a meter, which is the software installed on the phone, I did have the opportunity of doing work on that in Incitrix.
So since you've been doing it since you started with Tetrix, how have you been enjoying it? Is this something you really like doing as part of your job?
Oh yeah, I think it's awesome because you get to see or to experience a person's interaction with their mobile phone. You tend to see like, oh, this person, did a lot of this in the morning, and in the afternoon they did this, and in the evening they did this. So you it's like you experience the person's day. You're kind of in their shoes, but you're looking from the outside. So it's been very, very, very interesting, because I've seen a lot of interesting things, this kind of search terms that people use, the kind of products that they want to shop for, the kind of YouTube videos they look at. So it's been very interesting.
Oh, that's really cool. And actually, the longer you do it, the more you get to know what average search terms are, how those are changing over time. That's really cool. Now, Julie, from a research point of view, what are some of the ways that we've used passive metering in our research?
Yeah, so we've been using passive metering now to really sort of help our clients understand their customers or their audience on a much deeper level. And I think, like Ifeoma mentioned there, that it gives us the ability to sort of follow them and their online habits and behaviors, and really understand sort of where they are, when they're there, what they're doing. And that kind of information is just invaluable in market research, of course.
Yeah, 100%. Have you been involved in any projects yourself that have used passive meter?
Yeah, for sure. We just finished one we wrapped up just before the holidays there. And it was a really interesting one. We were working with our client who actually had some really important safety information that they needed to get out to farmers in our province. And we have a large agricultural sector here in Saskatchewan, so that kind of research is really important. And so we were able to use passive metering to follow farmers for a period of about a month, and following their online behaviors and helping our clients understand where they're going online, where they're finding their information, when they're there, so that they can get this really important safety information to the people that need it. And that was the farmers in this case.
That's really cool. So you'd say that was pretty darn beneficial to the research then, having that access.
Yeah, you bet. It's it kind of brings things to a whole another level that we just don't have access to using traditional methods like surveys or discussions or interviews. Like Ifeoma mentioned, we don't have to ask them where they went and when they were there. And, did you see this ad? We know you saw this ad, and I know where you saw it and what time of day. And then we can even follow them from there. And did they click on the ad? Did they go and search for something they maybe saw in the ad? So all of that information we can take back to our clients and really help them understand how to reach their audience.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, Ifeoma, a lot of folks might have some questions about the security of doing some passive data. Is this something that you're concerned of yourself? And how do we get around that kind of thing?
When it comes to the security of the passive metering, it's only natural to be concerned about security in general. Meters, like software that is developed for passive metering, is usually designed by people that are professionals in the field, and this software have to follow like the guidelines or the rules, certain rules and regulations that have to do with collecting data, how data is stored, giving consent and things like that. So as long as you're going with the client knows, or the respondents know that you're going with a company who incorporates all this, the security measures that are required by law, I personally believe that it is secure to use, and that can kind of reduce the anxiety that respondents will feel using such a meter. Yeah.
All those third-party suppliers, like you're saying, are following pretty strict protocols when they're designing the apps themselves. And we ourselves actually made sure that when we sourced our third-party supplier on that, we were pretty stringent about the security.
Yes, for sure.
Certified company, right? So
yeah, and letting the participants know upfront that we've taken all the guidelines that are required, and we're doing this, and this to be sure that you're safe and secure. That can give some level of comfort to the participants too.
Right on. Now, Julie, some folks, clients especially, might wonder about the ethicality. Sticking an app onto their customers' phones or potential customers' phones, and then spying on them, as you were. How do we get around that? How do we explain this to our clients that this is all voluntary and it's all above board?
Yeah, no, that concern is righteous, and especially these days, our online privacy is very important, and there are all kinds of concerns around that issue. So I think the number one most important thing that we do is ensuring that we gain that informed consent from our participants, and that means being very upfront about what we're doing, why we're doing it, what information we're going to be collected, how that information is going to be handled. And that sort of points to that sort of security, the security measures that Ifeoma was talking about. And so that's sort of the most important part of what we do is keeping our participants sort of in the know and giving them as much information as we can about the study, and, ensuring that their data is secure and helping them to understand how we're going to use it and who is going to see it and what we're going to do with it after, which is generally purge it once we're done. Mm-hmm. And that happens right from the beginning of the screening process. So when we're looking for participants, we tell them right up front, this is the study we're looking for. It's a little bit different. Here's what's involved. Let us know if you have any questions. Are you interested in participating? And then we work with them very closely right through the setup of the app on their device and really help them understand the process. And we also work on the client side to ensure that they understand, what we're doing, what we're gathering, and how it's going to be handled, because that's important for them to know when we're sort of working on their behalf.
I'm going to say, in addition to what Julie said, letting the client know that they can opt out at any point, they can uninstall the device at any point also helps, so they don't feel that they have to have the app on their phone for the full duration of the study. Mm-hmm. So letting them know that at any point, they could, you could opt out, you could decide not to continue. I think that gives also some level of comfort to the client, so to speak. To the participants, I mean.
I totally see that. The ability to just, pull the pin anytime you want to. If you find it's not something you want to be involved in, that'd be a big deal. I know for me personally. A lot of the time we working in stuff, we make assumptions about what are going to be challenges when we work with certain things. Is this consideration ever really a challenge when dealing with clients? Or, Julie, do you think that clients are pretty much aware of passive data and how it works and all of those considerations?
Because it's new to them, we have to work with them quite closely to help them understand, all of these nuances. But we found, especially in this last study that we did, just that process of being as upfront with our participants and with the clients, it really eased sort of a lot of the concerns that they had. And I think that gaining that participation was perhaps even less challenging than we thought because of that.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Now, Ifeoma, from a market research perspective, do you think that this, do you ever see any challenges adapting metering to the work that we do, or is it pretty much cut and dry?
I mean, I think the challenges from our last experience with the last study that we had, we were mainly trying to get the trust of the participants and trying to make them understand what was happening. And as Julie said, providing as much information upfront helped with most of the concerns that the participants had. We did see other challenges when it came to the data itself, in terms of how clean the data was and how the data was presented. So we still had to do some data cleaning to present the data in a way that we could use it. So I think with every study, there could be challenges. Of course, from the experience we've had with the last study that we worked on, I believe that these challenges could be overcome.
Since you've both been working in it, maybe I could ask you both for a bit of advice for any of our clients that might be considering getting into a study themselves that will involve this methodology. I'll start with you, Julie. Do you have any advice from a researcher's side on how our clients can better use this or the benefits they can get?
Yeah, I think that, just be prepared for the volume of data that you're going to get and the possibilities for sort of extracting those valuable, pieces of information for the client. Like, the possibilities are endless, and it's really up to you to sort of be creative and work with your client and understand exactly, what's going to help them and what they might be looking for. So it's really fun sort of on that end.
Right on. So work with your client a lot to make sure what they need before you jump into it, just because you might find yourself adrift in a sea of data really quickly, right? Yeah, right on. How about you, Ifeoma? Any advice for our clients?
I would say that we shouldn't see passive data as trying to replace survey data, but rather we should see it as a way of complementing survey data to get a whole picture or a clearer picture of the behavior of a client. I would also say that you should plan for, or you should recruit more than you actually want. So if you want 50 participants, you could recruit 60 in case 10 people decide to stop doing the study, like middle of the way. And the more you can collect data for, you get a clearer picture of the behavior of the participants. So if you have like a 3-month study or 3-month data collection period, you kind of see what happens. You have a better picture compared to if you have like a few days.
Right on. Well, this sounds like a really powerful research methodology. It really does. And like you're saying, it doesn't really replace anything, but it sure does give a lot of depth of data, before, when you were just relying on surveys and interviews, all you had to go with was reported behaviors. Now we've got actual behaviors, and we can bench those against real behaviors and what they say they're doing. And it's just awesome. It's just awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on and sharing your thoughts about passive data collection. It's been really great talking to you.
Thank you for having us.
Anytime.
Thanks, Duncan.
And there you have it. I want to thank Billy Grant from RealityMine for coming onto the podcast and explaining how their application is used to conduct passive data metering for businesses worldwide. We'd also like to thank our very own Ifeoma and Julie for joining the podcast to talk about their experience working with passive metering and explaining some of the processes Incitrix uses in passive data collection. If you would like to learn more about passive data collection or previous research Incitrix has done in this area, let us know. Drop us a line. And thank you. We have many exciting new things on the horizon at Incitrix. While I may be a unique voice to our growing podcast followers, we will continue to bring you the best ideas by the brightest minds in the market research industry. In whatever form we deliver that content, we thank you for sticking along for the ride. Don't forget to leave us a positive review or rating on whichever player you follow. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stories of Market Research. Thank you for listening, and we will chat again soon.